When it comes to the Vampire Lestat, it's one of my favorite books of all time. So I was very nervous going into this show. So how did we do? Welcome back, everyone. Today we're here to talk about the Vampire Lestat. This is my full season review. And before we get into it, I want to know, do you have a favorite book from the Vampire Chronicles or just a favorite book in general? And has it been adapted? And how did you feel about it? Let me know down in the comments below, because I feel like with books, there can be such an emotional connection that you have to text, and it can also coincide with something that's going on in your life when you're reading the book. And so there's a lot of meaning that we can pull from the works that we attach ourselves to. And for me, I guess I never really fully understood why Lestat was a character that I loved so much. I mean, I know I love his confidence, I love his bravado, I love the theatrical nature of him, how dramatic he is. He's very beautiful. He's described as being very beautiful in the books, and in this show, he's played by Sam Reed. Beautiful. So there's definitely that element. There's definitely this attraction that I felt to him. But I think when it comes to the character, something that I discovered, and really I want to say this show made me discover this, is that I have a lot of similarities to this character. I see a lot of myself in him, and looking at the flaws of the character, and I think the way that this show approaches taking off the mask that Lestat wears, the many masks that Lestat wears, and breaking down all the different layers of who he is something that's been quite fascinating for me. And I am very surprised to say that I had kind of an epiphany watching this show. So we're gonna get into that and kind of where my connection to the character came from in this interpretation. But before we do that, I just want to acknowledge, yes, I am in a different place again. Whoa. I'm currently traveling for Gen Con as I'm filming this. So you're catching me in an Airbnb. It's actually quite a nice Airbnb. And my roommates, it's weird. I have roommates. I'm like in a house with other people, other guests that are staying here. We each have rooms, kind of like a bed and breakfast or a hotel. And they're all super nice. So yeah, it's really great. But that's why I'm in a very white room right now. Honestly, it kind of looks a little bit creepy. Maybe it is perfect for Lestat. So let's talk about what I enjoyed about it. And I maybe have one note for the show that I will get to at the end that is a bit of a criticism. However, I think something that's really cool about this show is that it is only one part of the whole story. The Vampire Chronicles, there's a lot of books. And if we wanted to keep going, there is a lot of material for us to get into. And even within the realm of Lestat, there is a lot of material for us to get into. And this show gets into a lot of stuff, but it doesn't get into everything even. So just keep that in mind, that this is maybe only part of a larger story. I believe that to be true. So let's talk about what this show is about. I think it's really cool that we are referring to everything that's kind of going on here as the failures. When we're first introduced to Lestat and this series, it's coming from a place of the future. So we're looking back at everything that has transpired. Lestat's music, this album, the making of it, what destruction it has wrought, but we don't really know because we haven't seen it yet. And now I kind of know, as someone that's read the books, where they're going with it. And I think if you've read the books, you probably also know where they're going with it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything will be the same. It also is cool for people that I think are coming into this story for the first time. The way that they decided to tell this story is so fascinating, starting kind of at the end of the story and then going back through the past, going back through all of Lestat's story, really, the beginning. And we go all over the place. It's not even fully linear, which is cool. I like that. It's a very non-linear story, and maybe that's the magic of it, because even though we're jumping around a lot, what I think the through line really is for this show is the revelations that Lestat is having as he goes on this journey of self-discovery by reflecting on his past and having to confront the failures in his life, his exes, his loves, what he's lost, and everything that he's been through, everything that he has suffered and hasn't really fully accepted, I think, in some ways. Lestat is a character that is a very happy-go-lucky kind of person, but I always feel that with characters like that, and I think there's evidence for this in the books as well, that when you have someone that seems so cheerful despite anything, they're probably suffering the most. And that's kind of what we see here. I mean, I think the failure is what it's really about thematically, is it's about this idea of trying to do insane things and failing and seeking to set yourself up for failure. You're doing things that are so huge that you know they can't succeed, but there's that fear of what if I actually achieve the thing? So there's a lot of self-sabotaging that Lestat does. And personally, in my own journey, in my own life, that is something that I have done sometimes, and I've been on a whole therapy journey to look into that and find out why that's happening for me. So I think Lestat's fear of success is something that I connect with, and that's something that I took away from this show. Maybe not everybody will see that, and maybe not everyone will agree that that's what the character represents for them, but for me, that's how I felt. And the show made me realize that, actually, because even going back and recently rereading Interview with a Vampire, which I did for my book club over on Patreon, and I will have a review video also coming here where I'm going to discuss my thoughts on that rereading it, I can see a lot of the stuff that they're exploring in this show and a lot of those cracks in Lestat, a lot of those little tragic flaws. Really what this show is examining is that idea of fake it till you make it. But what also happens when you never do? What does success mean? How do we measure success? And I think who decides what success is? And I think for Lestat, there's a lot of him looking to other people for approval in his life. And when it comes down to it, maybe he doesn't fully embrace this, but I love how the show ends with him kind of saying, you know what? I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm fabulous and I love me. And so what if I failed? And I think I did pretty great, actually. I think I was pretty amazing. Even if he doesn't really feel that way, you know, that is very much fake it till you make it energy, in my opinion. But there is, I think, a part of him that wants to believe that's true and that wants to accept himself for everything that he is and see himself as someone that does take the risks and lays it out all on the line, and maybe that is enough. Maybe the idea of success is this fear that we're just not enough, right? Oh boy. Wow. You guys are hitting me in the feels with this show. This has been a really good year for television. Another part of the show that I really loved, what we highlighted here, was the relationship between Louis and Lestat. And while I am kind of sad that David Talbot is gone, I know there's apparently people that don't like David Talbot, but personally, from reading the books, and I haven't reread all of them super recently, so I understand the creepiness that people are talking about with the Talbot, and I get it. But for me, I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer because he's kind of a really interesting character, especially in Queen of the Damned, which we're going to be moving into next. Now we know that is confirmed that that's happening. But what I think is really cool is that they've basically given Louis and Daniel more of an active role in Lestat's story and let them, I think, kind of be the replacement for what David is for Lestat, this friend, this confidant, this person he can depend on. And I love that because Louis and Lestat's relationship is just so beautiful. The fact that Brutal Love is this homage to everything that Louis is to Lestat. Their love is so eternal, and it is so like a love where there are elements of it that are still toxic, and there are things about these characters that are kind of still broken, but they just fully accept each other for who they are, the good and the bad, and they take it as it comes. And there are even moments where I feel like they actually love the flaws of the other person as well. And that is the truest love. And they are these characters that always come back together. So I like having Louis here in a more active role because he is kind of absent in the Vampire Lestat in the books. And he also plays more of a kind of background role in Queen of the Damned as well. So giving him more to do, giving him more of an active role. And also when you have someone like Jacob Anderson here playing playing Louis. I think that was all beautifully done. So many good Louis Lestat moments, so many good Lestat moments. I also was really impressed with how we approached Armand and Armand's trauma and everything that's been going on with him, because I never really fully clicked, I think, with Armand in the books. Like, I like the character, but I don't think I ever really fully understood him. And what I like about Assad's approach to this character is that he understands him in a way that I just never really considered before. I think Assad Zaman's approach to Armand makes him more interesting to me. And all of this, I think, is kind of there as well in the text. There's a lot of subtext that we play with in the Vampire Lestat, and that's something that I like about the approach in general to the immortal universe, is that, at least, you know, on the vampire side. I can't talk about the witches yet because I haven't seen that yet, but don't worry. I do want to check out Mayfair Witches at some point. But on the vampire side, I think there is a lot of subtext that we're playing within the books, but it's all there if you look for it. And when Assad Zaman talked at the Hall H panel in San Diego Comic-Con about this idea of a character who's kind of always performing, who's always on, and when no one's watching him, he's not really involved with anyone because he doesn't really know how to be alone, I think. What is that like? And I think it's cool because having Armand here and having him in such an active role also made me realize that I think there are a lot of similarities actually between Armand and Lestat, and maybe that's also why they don't really get along, because they have some similar stuff going on where they don't really know how to be alone. They're not good at that. And when they are, it hurts. And they're both people that are looking for love, that are not able to get the type of love that they need. And going into Armand's origin, before he was even a vampire, and some of the stuff that we touched kind of lightly on in this season. I hope there'll be more of it. I would love for them to do a whole The Vampire Armand show, because there is a whole book about Armand and it's really interesting. It's really good. And I even really think the relationship between Armand and Marius is really fascinating. And we got Marius in this season too, even though I don't know how I feel about the hair for Marius, but I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with that character, because he is one of my favorite characters from the book. So to see Armand here, to see him also coming into this very eternal and also kind of toxic love with Daniel, which I'm sure we'll explore more with the Devil's Minion. That relationship, I think, is so cool. And we've really only just begun to touch on that. Everything they're doing with Armand, I really liked. And at first I was a little nervous about it, having Armand kind of play the villain role and really leaning into that. And I thought, is that really who Armand is? But once they made the case for why Armand was doing what he was doing in the finale, I really came around and was like, wow, this is actually brilliant. This is great. And to hear Assad talk about the character and his approach to Armand, I just think he really gets it. And I'm curious to see where we're taking it next. And I can't wait to see more Daniel and Armand stuff. I know in the After Dark they've said that's coming, so I can't wait to see what people are up to in the in-betweens of the Vampire Lestat. We'll talk more about that near the end of this review. What I also think is fascinating is doing the Vampire Lestat as kind of like an album about Lestat's exes. And when I think about it, I never really thought of it this way, but it is true that the Vampire Lestat is kind of like the exes tour book, where it's just Lestat going through all the relationships that he's had in his life, whether they were platonic or romantic or familial or some blend of those things. And talking about these people that he's loved, that he's lost. And it's just like one person after the next. And so to kind of approach it as almost like a Taylor Swift breakup album is what it feels like. I think that's amazing. And the music has been so great. Having that as the through line for the entire show, and having it be like each song is a bit of Lestat's past, is about a person from Lestat's past. In some cases, some songs I think are about multiple people altogether. I kid you not, I have been playing like 3 or 4 songs from the soundtrack on loop. Do you want to know what they are? Let me see if I can remember off the top of my head. Stained Glass Eyes, Brutal Love, The Loneliness, and Your Biggest Fan. Those are the 4 that I have on repeat, but I've honestly been listening to the whole album like kind of nonstop. So I think I'm kind of obsessed. The music is really good, and the way they wove it into the story, it's just genius storytelling. in my opinion. This script is so fast and witty as well, and I can't wait to go back through it and rewatch it and see what I missed, because there is so much going on and it all moves so fast that it is hard to keep up. But what I love about that is it means that they're thinking about the show in terms of the rewatch, and they're thinking about the show in terms of the stuff that maybe you weren't thinking about when you were first watching it, but then when you get later into the season, you're like, oh, wait a minute, they mentioned this name and that happened earlier, and wait, is there a connection? And there's like a hot dog sign in the opening credits. And is that a reference to when Lestat is talking about how he wants to meet the guy that eats hot dogs? He's like a professional competitive hot dog eater. There's just so many little things in this that I feel like I'm gonna need to watch this show multiple times, and I can't wait to, because I really enjoyed it, clearly. We're also talking about the great conversion in the show, which is a huge thing, especially when it comes to what that is going to mean for Queen of the Damned. And I can't wait to see how that will come into play. But I think it was cool how we built all of that up, and there's a little bit of mystique around it still, and I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. So the great conversion, a lot of the allusions that they did in this to specific terminology from the books, I always think is great. I think we did also talk about the Savage Garden, the Devil's Road, and while it's not exactly the same as how the books get to it, the fact that we're bringing that up, the fact that we are also finding even some new terminology in this interpretation, in this adaptation, is great. I don't really know what more I could ask from this team. I feel like they've given me almost everything I've wanted. They even surprised me with bringing back Claudia in their own way with Regina, Fraudia, and then they did a full extra surprise of being like, oh, you thought we were just gonna do Fraudia? No, we're actually also gonna do Claudia, because we're gonna do Claudia's ghost. We're gonna move that up to this. I thought that was a beautiful scene. It might be, I mean, there's a lot of great scenes in this. I think Lestat singing Brutal Love to Louis is one of my favorite scenes, like, ever of all time. That scene is amazing. But Claudia's seance, probably second place. That's a really good one too. I don't know though. Louis and Lestat on the bench is also really good. There's so many good scenes. So everything they did with Claudia this season, and even having her as Fraudia, and Louis going after Killer, and everything that kind of meant, Killer / Bruce, and everything that kind of meant for when Claudia comes back, how she sees Louis, and this idea of, Louis has always kind of been using Claudia for his own stuff that he has going on. It's not really about Claudia. He's trying to hold her up as this idea of what she is, but that isn't even really who she is. He doesn't even really see her, which is really sad. I think the way that they approached all of that was great, and I love that Claudia got to come back and have her final say. And I do think she's in a very emotional place when she says it. I think it's complicated, because with Louis, she does hate him, but she also loves him. So, it's heartbreaking stuff. But in the book, even in Interview with a Vampire, there's a scene where she calls out Louis. We'll talk about it more in the book review, but I just love that they let Claudia have that moment, because I think it's important for her character, and it's important as well for the closure when we bring Claudia back in the seance for Lestat and Louis as well. Definitely for Louis. More for Louis than Lestat, probably, actually. Lestat did a whole song, so he's good. We also brought Akasha in this season, and I love what we did with Akasha. We have Sheila Atom taking up the role of Akasha. I just feel like what we did with Akasha here was so cool and so smart, and what a powerful way to introduce the character, and giving us this insane speech, and then the teaser that they've already shown us for Queen of the Damned and where we're headed. I mean, I cannot wait for us to really get into the story of Akasha, because it is a fascinating mythos that Anne Rice has woven when it comes to the world and when it comes to the origin of these vampires. And it's very much connected to her. She is the queen, she is the mother, and there's just a lot of exciting stuff that we have ahead. And based on what I saw in the Vampire Lestat, I think we've chosen the right person to play the role. And I think we also have the right direction for what we're going to do with her. I can't wait to see her in like her full glory. It's gonna be crazy. When it comes to my issues with the show, let's talk a little bit about that. One thing I think they kind of addressed, but the other, it's a little bit more complicated. And one of those things is Gabriella. Gabrielle in the books has a little bit more going on than what we did with her in the show. And I do like Jennifer Ely's portrayal of her, but I just wish that we had seen a little bit more of the idea of her becoming free through moving away from her gender. Now, granted, Gabrielle in the books is doing that because she is also coming from a time period where women do not have that power and men have the power. And so I don't necessarily think that she doesn't identify with her gender. I think that she is still very much a woman. She is very feminine as well. But there is this kind of raw, masculine, almost like a hunter energy to her. They captured it a bit in this show, but we didn't really fully get to see the wild side of Gabrielle, like her in the nature, her in the dirt, her messy, her, cutting off her hair and dressing like a man to kind of escape the life that she had before, to escape what it was to be a wife and a mother and feel that she was basically held in shackles by her gender. And we haven't examined that as much in Lestat, as much as we do in the book anyways. In the Vampire Lestat, the show, we don't really get into it. In the book, you get into it a lot more. But that being said, I'm gonna get into the next thing now, which is this show is great, but there is a lot missing. However, something that I loved is I finished all the After Darks, and I also wanted to make sure I did that before I came back to talk to you guys, because the After Darks, they do talk a lot about the making of the show and the direction and how it all comes to pass and what the approach is. And something that Roland said was that he said, with the Vampire Lestat, it's so interesting because we've really done probably about like half of Lestat's story in this. And so there's a lot more. And it sounds like what he's saying is, this is the overall kind of story, but there's still more for us to get into and more for us to play with. And I'm hoping that's also true for Gabrielle. But what I love is that they basically addressed what one of my criticisms would be, which is the only thing is this was kind of short. Like I wish we had more of it because there is so much more. However, you do kind of need to pick and choose, and you can't get into like every single detail. And goodness knows there are times when I feel like Anne Rice can just go on forever describing a room. So, I don't know if we necessarily need all of those little details, but there are specific characters and scenes that are important that they didn't do in this. And instead we're kind of paraphrasing, but that doesn't mean that we might not get into it. There might still be more for us to explore in Lestat's story. And I hope there is, because it sounds like what they're saying is they want to leave that door open as they continue the journey to go back and still explore other bits of characters' stories so that it's not all necessarily like the Vampire Lestat, the show is just, that's all we get for that book, or even Interview with a Vampire, that's all we get for that book. We might revisit some of these stories and get other little elements that we haven't touched on yet because maybe it's relevant to revelations that are coming down the line. So I'm gonna wait and see, but that's really my only criticisms is that there's some stuff that I really loved in the book that we didn't get into here. And at some point I'd love to do a Vampire Lestat book club. So maybe I'll also come back and do a review for that book and we can talk more about some of those moments that are missing. That would be like a whole other video, to be honest with you, but just my only thing is that I feel like they didn't cover everything. But I love that they acknowledge that they didn't and that they're basically saying like, hey, wait a minute, there's more. That's cool. And I think the interesting thing, just to finish off, is that something else that I realized is just how much Lestat kind of is his own worst critic, how much he struggles to accept himself, to accept the potential of success. The failures, that's really what that's all about. And there is like this fearlessness to him and this bravery where he just throws himself into love and throws himself into things and he doesn't give up and he just keeps going. But I also feel like in a way it's Lestat's way of distracting himself from what's happening, and he puts himself out there almost to know that he's going to be crushed, because there's a part of him that I think feels he is not worthy of love, and he is not worthy of success, and he's afraid of falling short and of disappointing everyone. And ultimately, there is a part of him that really struggles to love himself. And that's heavy, and that is so real. It's always the biggest performers that are the ones that have the greatest like imposter syndrome, where they feel they're just never going to be good enough for anything. And honestly, I get that. I struggle with that on a daily basis. So Lestat, you are not alone, my friend. You are not alone. And this show doing that and making me realize that, it was beautiful. I felt so seen. I'm just so grateful that we get to have this adaptation. I never thought something like this would ever get to happen. These books are so beloved for me. So to see people approaching them, to see actors and writers and creatives approaching this material and really trying to do it justice, it really means a lot to me. So I think it was really good overall. I had a great time with it. I can't wait to rewatch it. I can't wait to also rewatch Interview with a Vampire, the first 2 seasons. That was also amazing. Everything's been amazing so far. And I mean, yeah, I've got notes as a book lover, but nothing that is really ruining the show for me so far. So curious to see what they're going to do with Queen of the Damned. Hopefully they can keep it going. Roland also talked about this idea of playing with the things we haven't seen yet. So stay tuned for that. Talking about this idea of like, you know, we haven't seen everything that everyone's been doing. And when we were looking at this character and this other character wasn't there, where were they? What were they doing? And talking about how Queen of the Damned is all about these different perspectives. So I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with that, because that is true. And who's to say what is real? Because when you examine it from a character's point of view, you're going to be examining it through their lens, much like, I mean, playing with perspectives is something Anne Rice loves to do, and she's so good at it in her work. And Interview with a Vampire, that's why that's such a great book, because it's all from Louis's perspective, which means we're getting, you know, part of the story. We're getting Louis's vision of what happened. And Louis at times is lying to himself, just like Lestat does. They both do that. So maybe that's why they belong together. I don't know. Anyways, that's all I have for this one. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on this season down in the comments below. I'll see you down there. And until next time, friends, as always, stay nerdy. Bye. And if you love when I talk about the Vampire Lestat, the Immortal Universe, the Vampire Chronicles, you can click right over here to check out more of that.